Next time John introduces me, I want him to tell you that my influence on something else can't be overestimated. That's his challenge. Anyway, I will begin this talk by saying to you that the video that I showed you misses out something, I think, completely fundamental to life, and something which over the course of the building of the modern world we've kind of lopped off our brain about and replaced it with a kind of pretend module. It doesn't really help us very much, and that is, how do we choose good from bad? I'll play the video. No, I'm on the wrong video. I'm on video 3. I should be on video 2. Hopefully this will, hopefully I can, yes, that was easy enough. Here we go. Intrinsic beauty has been central to the art and architecture of every civilization, except ours. Somehow we've lost touch with the basic distinction between being good for its own sake, whether aesthetically, technically, or morally, and being useful. Between the price of things and their value, our sense of intrinsic merit is so weak that we completely fail to see how modern miracles like Wikipedia work. It's not its democratic openness to all. It's not actually democratic. Its openness just leverages the real miracle. Wikipedia's meritocracy identifies, trains, promotes and nurtures leaders who put intrinsic motivation and merit first. But I'll get to that in our next video. We make the same mistakes everywhere. Today's leaders work hard in politics, business, bureaucracy, and academia. They're also talented, but they've got there by winning the competition for attention, votes, and money, and the favour of the powerful. So their virtues are shot through with all those vices you'd expect: careerism, self-promotion, greed, and flattery. And looking to these leaders as role models, we confuse what it takes to win with merit itself. So narcissists and psychopaths thrive, and we idolise them. Even worse, so much is done to flatter those above and manipulate those below that real truth-telling, or even truth-seeking, is going extinct. Drowning in bullshit, we're increasingly unable to distinguish true from false, right from wrong, good from bad, pretense from the real thing. So where do we look for answers? In fact, America's founding fathers understood these things. Their ideal president was a unifying figure of integrity, wisdom, and courage. Ideally, they'd take on the job reluctantly, not out of ambition. They'd be someone like George Washington. The founders thought presidential campaigning for your vote would be divisive and shameful. So, borrowing from practices common in the aristocratic Republic of Venice at the time, they designed the Electoral College, where a small group of people could deliberate and choose a leader wisely. But its design was fatally flawed. Its members were determined by direct election, so it was quickly captured by party politics. They were groping towards what I call bottom-up meritocracy. So were those people running this Australian Citizens' Assembly. With hundreds of citizens, they needed spokespeople for the group. But they didn't just want the pushiest people, so they randomly chose a small group of members and asked them, 1, which qualities should spokespeople have, and 2, which members had them. Those chosen were a great mix of temperaments and abilities. They were gender balanced, though that had not been one of the criteria. And isn't that the best kind of gender balance? This is actually how office holders were chosen in Venice. They randomly selected a few electors from the 2,000 nobles who governed the city, and those electors chose the best people for greater power, the senators, inner councillors, and even the Doge himself. To prevent intimidation, bribery, and the divisiveness of competing campaigns, once drawn in the lottery, electors were immediately secluded from others and voted by secret ballot. By embracing bottom-up meritocracy, Venice became the Serene Republic. For 500 years, it staved off blood feud-driven crises, coups, and civil wars as they engulfed one comparable country after another. Those within its governing class took turns in governing and being governed. And the rulers chosen from within the governing elite, the senators, the councillors, and the Doge, all got there on their merits as judged by their peers. Now, a medieval aristocracy is a far cry from modern democracy. But could we benefit from introducing more bottom-up meritocracy into our politics, our bureaucracy, schools, universities, and charities? Is the Doge a Catholic? As you can see, I'm in desperate need of a better joke to finish that video with, but at least it tickled some people's fancy. That speaks to something. I hope that, it's only 5 minutes long, but I hope it gives you some idea of all the things that we're not considering, of all the ways in which we promote people, the way in which we identify people for leadership and give them leadership roles is massively distorted when you consider the range of human personalities. There's a gender dimension to that, but we've covered over that because we've got women where we've produced a system which gets more women into leadership, certainly in some sectors. And what kind of women are they? They're the ones who can play this leadership game that we have set up. So we are in a massively biased civilization. And one of the things that has been going on is that we've inherited systems which were far from perfect, and we've optimised them, and in so doing made them worse. I want to introduce you to a very simple idea that Charlie Munger was one of the most fundamental ideas of Charlie Munger. Charlie Munger died within a few months of his 100th birthday. He followed, in the last year, I think, he followed Mark Pesce's advice, worked harder and harder, I think, until a few weeks before the end, as he and his colleague Warren Buffett, as his colleague Warren Buffett said, I love this, Charlie and I tap dance to work every day. And Charlie Munger said that the highest form of human civilization was, write this down, a seamless web of deserved trust. Not a word wasted. And this idea of a seamless web, one of the most fundamental ideas is that we build these webs of trust, if they are to do with merit, usually necessarily are vertical. I flew to Sydney last night, and I'm glad that my pilot sat at the top of one of these vertical systems of trust. I'm glad that I didn't choose the pilot. I've had knee surgery. You know where with the next things I'm going to say. I'm glad that I didn't that it wasn't up to me to work out whether the surgeon could do a good job. I did, of course, ask around and ask people who knew a bit, but we have a system of vertical merit selection which worked reasonably well. I've got a few tips for improving it, but I won't go there at the moment. We had a system, again, highly imperfect, but a system that was a bit like that in politics, and I spoke to it there because what the Founding Fathers were trying to do in the Electoral College was build an institution which was a vertical structure for merit selection so that Donald Trump would never be elected. And those systems exist in the Westminster system because the Prime Minister, shock horror, is not elected. But we've transformed those systems into presidential systems because our whole, the means by which we do politics is through media. And what are the media doing? They're competing for clicks. And how do you compete for clicks? You head for the bottom of the brainstem. You make everything narcissistic as you can. So you have people coming out saying, I have my plan for housing, my plan for this. We all get to choose our pilot. Something similar has been going on in markets, as we heard from our second speaker today, where systems like shareholder value and private equity will go into companies that have built worthwhile, not necessarily maximally efficient, but then it's impossible to know whether something is maximally efficient over a long period of time. And they take out all the things that can be removed and save money for a period of time. And that again destroys this process. So the systems we had were full of problems, and we're now heading to this hollowed out set of systems, and these hollowed out sets of systems, if you think of that image that I presented to you with the vines and the spikes or the weed coming up, the world is getting made more and more for people like that, and that's one of the things that we've experienced in the last, I would argue over the last 300 or 400 years, but in an intensifying form, accelerationism, if you like, over the last 20 years. So we get this hollowing out of systems of genuine merit selection and those people who can counterfeit leadership coming up and taking advantage. And bullshit, of course, is a major part of that. And it's not terribly good that, as Ezra Klein says, the AI has now reduced the marginal cost of bullshit to zero. So there's a problem, and there are some hints again at a solution, ways that we can get the weed killer out and let the vine grow. Do I get to ask anyone? Do I get to invite questions, or are you going to bundle me out again? Okay, so interested to hear any reactions. Fire away. Yes. Sorry about that.
taking Mark's advice to heart.
Sorry, I just want to mention that we already have some pretty strong bottom-up institutions in our country at the moment called trade unions, and I wonder what your idea of trade unions in this future vision that you have, what role do they play?
Yeah, well, that's an interesting question. I think it's sad what has happened to trade unions over the last 20 years, but it is also the case that trade unions are part of the system that we have, which is that they build power by that there is an organisational logic which is to be viable. They need to function as organisations. They need to function as activists. That creates insiders and outsiders. I know that that's contrary to the ideology of many unions. It's simply the institutional fact. I've taken these ideas to unions. I've taken these and similar ideas to unions. I remember taking an idea about getting the data from corporate surveys of employee engagement into the public arena, and I tried to interest unions in that, and they said, and a number of them said, no, we're much happier when things are going badly because that's where we play. Now, I'm not suggesting you agree with that. I'm not wanting to play goodies and baddies here. What I'm trying to say is that it is necessary that we are part of a particular logic. I'm part of a logic here too. We're all part of the logic. So the idea is not, oh, let's have a revolution and get out the lilos. The idea is to have an eye to both of these things, to be a good organisation within the imperatives of the system, and then to be thinking of whether it's possible to transcend that system.